art therapist and an artist. So
I teased you that it's circus stuff.
yes, big umbrella of things.
Hi, everyone. My name is Scott. Welcome to the video podcast, whatever this is here today. I have a special guest with me, somebody that's very interesting, someone that I know fairly well, Salome. And just kind of a disclaimer here. Salome happens to be my son's girlfriend, and they live in Germany. So that's all the detail I'll say. I won't mention my son's name because he goes by another name on the internet. So I'll respect that. But Salome, do you want to introduce yourself here?
Yeah, my name is Salome, and I am the girlfriend of your son, as you said already. And I guess I can say a little bit of what I do for a
Yes.
living. I'm an art therapist and an artist, so I work in a clinic and do art therapy in a clinic with teenagers, with young adults. And I also do art on the side, like I do visual art, like paintings and drawings, photography, mixed multimedia mixed art. And I have this both, how do you say it? These both fields that I do and are passionate about. And on the side of this, I also do circus acrobatics, like the physical workout kind of things, also part of what I do a lot and what I like. And I am 26 years old and I live in Germany. And what else can I say? I don't know.
No, that was good. That was good. I mean, that's an interesting summary. That's a very interesting summary because you covered a lot of topics. Art therapy. First of all, the interpretation with art, and I tease you about this. Well, just full disclosure, I tease everybody about everything, and it's not meant to be mean.
Yeah.
It's curiosity. It's fun. Trying to bring fun to. Sometimes it's difficult situations. And we could talk about difficult situations. We could talk about a lot of things. So you opened the door. You covered everything from serious art therapy to circus.
Yeah. Yes. Big umbrella of things.
It is
Yeah. But
a huge umbrella.
Yeah, but it's really nice because I can also tell, like, I am 3 days in the clinic working, and 2 days I do circus classes for kids. And I can really see the difference of the mental and physical work that I have to do. In the clinic, I'm very much in my head and have to think in theory, okay, be a therapist, be very mindful about what I say and what I do and what I offer. And when I'm teaching circus or even do circus for myself, like as like a hobby, it's more physical and it's less theory thinking, and it's very nice balance to have, to do like 1 week. I have very theoretic thinking where I have to think a lot, and also have very physical activity that really balance the other thing out. So
And so when we talk about circus stuff, and I teased you that it's circus stuff, you had an official name for it where you were tied up in what the heck is it called, where you're on the thing falling from the
yeah, it's called aerial silk.
aerial silk. Okay, you
Yeah.
called it aerial silk, and I dumbed it down to my level, and I went, that's circus stuff.
It's just like you said, it's art therapy is working with free crayons, or very
Yeah.
summarized,
Yes.
minimalistic description, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like to dumb things down to my level. I'm not an art therapist, so I think of things as, okay, that's crazy or that's nice, and it's the world is more complex. But for me, I'm trying to read in a picture book versus a very serious encyclopedia.
But you know what? I think this is really good also because I feel like oftentimes very complex topics, they are already complex in itself. And if you can find description that's easy to understand, it doesn't cover everything by you saying this. But if you, for example, politics is very complex topic, and people also talk about in very complex words, so people don't understand it. Like normal
Mm-hmm.
people that don't do politics don't understand politics because you make it hard to understand. And it's also the same, I think, with things like maybe art therapy or whatever. If you are the professional in the topic, of course you know how it works and you find the right words to explain it. But for people that don't know how it works, you must find easy words to explain to people. And I think this is not a bad concept of finding easy, how you said it, dumb down, or I don't know how you
Dumb it,
said it.
dumb it
Yeah,
down. And
yeah,
we also, you grew up in Germany.
yeah,
Your parents have German and Turkish ancestry.
yeah,
Your father's side came from Turkey. Your mother's side from Germany.
yeah.
Um, so you have a very interesting take on things, and from a cultural standpoint, you bring a lot of cultural um, diversity to the table here from our discussion. But
Hmm.
yes, I like to dumb things down. Um, it's easier for me. Really, it's easier for me to understand these things and comprehend them. But I also think a lot of people like to make things overcomplicated.
Hmm.
Um, whether
Yeah, I
it
think
be
so. Yeah.
jobs or politics, like you said, and sometimes they like to overcomplicate things to make people look stupid, which
Hmm.
is wrong. But also times, and I've worked with engineers before, sometimes engineers see things in an engineering world and they don't see things from a different perspective. And that's why I think our discussion today sees things from different perspectives. Like
Hmm.
you come from a very unique perspective, culturally, geography wise, age wise.
Hmm.
And I'm from what a friend of mine calls white bread. uh, so years ago, there was this TV show that came to town and was looking for people. They were
Okay.
looking for people, and I took one of my sons with me, and that's a whole different discussion because he wanted to go and be on this TV show, and he wanted me to go with him. So we went and did kind of read a few lines and gave some info about ourselves to be on this TV show. And we didn't get picked. And a friend of mine, I told him what we went through, and he goes, "They're never gonna want you on TV." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "You're white bread. You're boring. Like you're just not very exciting. They want dramatic, crazy people that are doing whatever." Now, and I'm not
Be-
saying I'm not crazy or do stupid things, but I tend to be more boring than I am crazy. Now
you
you
think
deal. Go ahead.
because of the way you look, you think?
No,
Or
not
this person said this
this
because
isn't
of
looks.
the.
It's just because I'm just boring. Like married forever, have kids. Yes, I do things like I'm adventurous, ride motorcycles, travel, but it's just boring stuff. Like I don't do anything what the world comparatively to the world would be
Mhm.
exciting and would
Yeah,
be.
okay. Yeah.
TV is about shock and awe. TV has always been about showing rare exceptions like
Mhm.
Bigfoot or people that have 5 ears. Like
Yeah.
I got none of that. Maybe my ears are bigger, but they're no. I'm no circus clown. Sometimes I act like a clown, but or to use what did the VP candidates in the U.S. just did a debate, and the one side the guy says,
and I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's all.
and I think you on the other hand, you're culturally different. You
Mhm.
have different perspectives. You grew up in a different time frame than obviously in myself. You've seen things differently. And while I think we've disagreed on things, I think we get along with them. And the nice thing about you is you're open to perspectives where a lot of people aren't even open. And I think that's the good thing about our discussion, even
Mhm.
though we're age wise, geography wise, culturally, just two different ends. And we can go into how different we are. But we get along. We relate. We respect each other's opinions. And I think that's a good example, Salo,
Mm-hmm.
of really how the world should behave.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, through my work, I've had the opportunity to meet and work with and work for, or have people work with me that are in different cultures and different ages around the world. And personally, for me, it's about learning from them. You know, whether it be, no matter how much experience I have and what my age is, it's about learning from them. And I think people
Mm-hmm.
can learn from you, even though, even though you're a circus girl. There are things that we can learn from that, and I joke about that
Yeah.
and I tease you about that, but I still think, okay, that's interesting. We can learn from that. So let's talk about your generation. Is generation, what do they call your
I
generation?
think it's Gen Z. I think either Gen Z or millennial, but I think depends if you Google it. Like I'm born 1998, and
Okay,
in some classification it's Gen Z, and some it says millennial. I guess it's something in between.
nobody
Depends who
really
you
wants to
ask.
take you. You're too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
your generation, though, how do you classify your generation? Like, I'm in Gen X, so my generation
Mhm.
is well known.
In general, I think our generation, we grew up with technology as a part of our existence. And even if we grew up with technology a lot, I can also say that we also witnessed the big development of technology, because I remember, for example, I remember when I was a child, cell phones were a thing, but there was no WhatsApp, no smartphone or anything. I still experienced that time where people are not as much interconnected. And I think that was developing so fast. And we could witness that as a generation.
Mm-hmm.
For us, it's normal that you can call someone or
Mm-hmm.
you can Google something or whatever. And I think there's a term for this, digital. I don't remember now. What is the name?
Digital
There's a
dependent. That's how I'd see it. Like, you're dependent on that
yeah,
technology.
kind of, but this is not the word I was searching. It was something like
I'm
digital.
dumbing it down and making it favorable for
Yeah,
my side, really.
yeah,
Because we're like, I think my generation's more independent. Like, we didn't grow up with that technology. We didn't
yeah,
have
yeah.
that technology. Like, the personal computer came into play.
Mm-hmm,
Um, when I was a little bit older, like teenager wise, like we didn't have that.
mm-hmm.
Like, I'm gonna date myself, and I'm 57, so here it's all out. Generation X. I grew up. My school didn't have computers. Now,
Yeah.
I know that they existed, but I went to a small private school and they didn't have the funds for that. I
Mm-hmm.
had typing class, so I had a big electric typewriter, and that's where I learned to type.
Oh
And
wow.
my
Okay.
father, being in business, wanted me to learn how to type, and I didn't understand why, because typewriter was associated with like a secretary or a receptionist who was
Okay.
typing up a letter. But he wanted me to learn how to type. I actually took typing 1 and typing 2, and it wasn't until after high school that I understood the meaning of that, because that's how you type on a
Mm-hmm.
computer. But we didn't grow up. I didn't grow up with technology. I didn't have that privilege, and we had to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to do things on our own. Like, you had to figure out how to get places on your own. We didn't have iPhones or maps. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we had a map, but it was a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Um, and you just figure. And I think about this today. How did we get anywhere? Because I was always of the type that we would go places. Like, I always like to explore neighborhoods I've never been into, places I haven't been to. Like, let's just go there. And how I figured out where I was going, sometimes in the middle of nowhere, I don't remember how that happened. Like, okay, you take this expressway to here and you get
Mm-hmm.
off and there might be a bus on the corner or something. Like, that's how we literally traveled. Like, that's how we got
Mm-hmm.
around. We didn't print out a map, or we didn't have that ability. So I huge difference is how we figured things out to how I think your generation figures things out. Like we can live if my phone goes down, I don't freak out. Like I can still do things. It doesn't hurt my feelings. And frankly, sometimes I wish I got rid of my phone. But your generation is very dependent on that. You don't understand how to go anywhere without it.
Yeah, I think because it's something so natural for us, because we grew up with this whole thing as normal, we don't think about it anymore. We just know it's there, and we don't think about what happens if we don't have that anymore. And everyone has a phone in their pocket now. And I mean, I guess it's an interesting thing to think about if the generation, like my generation, would be overwhelmed if the phone wouldn't be there anymore. Because I also think there's so many addictions by now with
Yes.
all this like phone and like all these social media apps that put your attention where the attention span is very small.
Yeah, very short attention span, like very short. Like it's seconds. Like you got to grab people's attention in seconds. And that's another thing from a generational perspective. Like, and let's kind of, I guess, weave this into therapy. Okay. From a generational perspective, you see a lot more younger people suffering from anxiety or from depression. And I think, I don't know how it's tied to the phone or technology, but I think it is tied to the phone and technology, meaning you have a shorter attention span. You're concerned how many likes you get in a photo or a video. My generation didn't care. Like we didn't have that pressure. You had the pressure of people in your school or your community, whoever you associated with. Do they like you? Don't they like you? But it wasn't that big of a deal. Like you'd have bullies. Like it was just that was what made up the community. You'd have bullies. You'd have athletes. You'd have people that were really smart. You'd have your small group of friends, and sometimes you'd get along with all these people. Like you just got along with everybody because you only had a few people in the community or that you associated with, and they were all different perspectives. You didn't have the technology to bring one group of people together or to have virtual friends. Like when we picked up the phone, it was an effort. Like you had to either pay for a payphone, or you had a house phone and you had to call somebody or they had to call you. You usually got together with them. You went over to their house. You didn't have the technology where you were hearing things 24 hours a day around the world. Like, and I don't think our brains are made to take that kind of stuff.
No, they're not, because usually, like if we think back in the day, we were in communities, like back very old times. And I think one of the most important things for survival, if you break it down to like neuro and to the main part of brain function, all of that, I think like back in the day we lived in communities and knew, okay, what's happening in the near area. Right. And I think that is what you also described of what you experienced back in the day in the school. Okay, this is the social groups you care about, and this is everything very centered on where you actually are in the space.
Yep.
And I think because everything is so, you can access everything in any minute, in every second, you can know everything in the world. And I think this is the internet because it has all information laid out for you, which is at one point nice because you can do so many things with it. But at the other hand, it's also so harmful because our brains are not made for this much information. Also, in like a emotional way, depends on how emotional you are or how things affect you. But for example, it's a very common thing that people get very depressed when they see the news all the time, because what is in the news is only bad news. And if you all the time,
it's not white bread stuff. It's hype. It's sensationalism to get people's attention. You're right.
Yeah, that's really the currency,
Yep.
attention in that world. And I think this is really damaging to see everything and have access to all of the things, because how do you process that? You don't.
Right.
You can
I don't think
only.
we can process that. Like, and I think it's
Yeah.
made, I
Yeah.
think the more I understand government and the more I understand technology, the more I don't like either of those or trust either of those, because the purpose of any social media is to make money. It's to get you addicted. It's not to entertain you briefly and go ha ha ha. No, it's to keep you scrolling. It's to keep your attention. It's very manipulative. And I think they've used technology really to hurt a lot of people.
I've seen this documentary on Netflix. I think it was popular 2 years ago or so. I think it's called Social Network or something.
I think I did see
I,
that. Yes.
I forgot
Yeah.
what it is. So, no, it's Social Dilemma. This is what it's called, I think. And it's about like all these social media companies and apps and platforms, and exactly what you said, that they use your data, they collect. The only thing their goal is that you keep looking at this thing and you keep scrolling. And they said something really very interesting. What is his name? Phrase. They said, once it is for free, you are the product. And that is so true in that
Yes.
context, because it is free,
Yep.
but what are you paying for?
Right.
And you're paying for that you get manipulated, because they show you things they think you want, or at the end the things you want to buy, or how they can manipulate you at the end for making decisions you think you did, but at the end they made this for you, because they have smart algorithms that show you all these things. And this stuff only gets smarter in 5-10 years. I don't know with AI where all this is heading, if it's already this
I agree with you.
crazy.
And
Yeah.
it's so addictive that people can't give it up. Like,
Mm.
can't give it up. Personally, I wish I dreamt when the iPhone came out of having the iPhone. Like,
The
I
first one,
remember
you mean?
like when the first iPhone came out, I remember I had a
Okay.
flip phone, and I remember telling everybody I want an iPhone, and they just didn't understand it.
Okay.
And then I got my iPhone, and then they all went, whoa. So they all got iPhones. Now I really want the flip phone back, because the flip phone didn't control me. Like, this is controlling. It listens to everything I say. It very controlling and manipulative. Like, would you have a friend, okay, as an art therapist, as a therapist, would you recommend a client of yours to keep with a friend and have a close friend that manipulates them constantly and controls
Probably
that
not.
person?
No,
You tell them,
I would.
no, you have to
Yeah.
cut ties with your friend. Like,
Yeah.
because in the end, that's not really your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that wants to control you and manipulate you, it's not your friend. They're using you. And that's exactly what this is doing. Like,
It's
that's
really,
the problem.
yeah, it's really interesting, because what we talked about before, about the generational differences, I have seen also this kind of trend of even my generation, like young people, even younger than me, wanting also to go back to flip phones, and wish that when to have like an everyday life that is easier, because as you said before, anxieties rising, depressions rising, all these mental health disorders coming up because of reasons like this, because people are too much on their phones, because you don't go outside and you're overstressed, you're overworked, or whatever. All this is all linked together, I think. And what I think is interesting is, even if our generation, my generation, grew up with this as normal, they also recognize the problem, and also some part of it want difference too. I think it's kind of a dilemma, really, like
Right.
this documentary is called, because it gives you so much freedom, like what you said with this relationship example. Why would you stay in toxic relationship? Or because there is some things that keep you, and this small parts that feed you is probably the reason because you stay, and also habit and whatever reasons. And I think the same is for this technology, because we're so used to have it easy with, put in Google Maps where we go, or whatever, calculator, or I don't know, things like this. It's so easy, and because we're so used to it, and everyone's doing it.
Yes.
Imagine everyone would just stop using smartphones or apps.
Yep.
You would also stop, and I think it's a collective thing. And as soon as everyone still uses that, and you can connect with people, I think people still use it, and
Yeah.
even if it's toxic, because like social media also is toxic. People still use it, and people still want to connect because they search this human connection and human, what is this called?
And I also want to mention right here, Salo.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good point to mention. English isn't your first language.
Yeah.
But it never even occurred to me mention that at the beginning. And you're amazing from an English
Thank
standpoint.
you.
Like, but when you hunt for words, it's a reminder. Oh my goodness, I never even mentioned that English isn't even her first language. So thank you. And any difficulty you have with words, don't worry about it, because honestly, English is the only language I know, and I don't speak that very well. So
You can speak a few German words by now, or
well, and I have, in disclosure, I've been to Germany, but I spoke certainly more English than I did German. I can point and say I want this.
Yeah.
But so and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to mention that. It's a good point to mention that.
Yeah, but people that listen to this, they already know. I mean, I have an accent and stuff. They probably
You have an
know.
accent, but I didn't even disclose that to anybody.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, technology wise, we all love technology. They're making it more addictive, and they're integrating this into more parts in our life, really.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're my age, your age, or older. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can't, it's hard to not use the phone, because now you pay with it. You go on sites with this, you use it for maps, you use it for everything. But one thing that's just irritated me, first of all, the fact when I was in Germany, I used my phone for directions because I didn't know where I was going. And it would tell me what the speed limit was and how fast I was going. Okay. And I looked at that thinking to myself, I don't like this, because first of all, if they know I'm going over the speed limit, at some point they'll just send me a ticket. And people laugh and go, oh, that's not going to happen. 100% true, it's going to happen. First of all, how do they know what the speed limit is where I am? That somehow there's some technology that has let them know what the speed limit is. And at some point, and now they've just done this in the United States. So when I came back home this summer, just recently they did an upgrade on Google Maps that in the US, it now does the same thing. It tells you your speed, tells you what your speed limit is, and if you're speeding.
Yeah.
Now, I started doing some research like something's wrong with this. Well, there was a bill that the U.S. Congress passed, legislators passed in the U.S. to put more technology into cars. And part of that was Google Maps, allowing the government essentially to know how fast you're going. And when you're driving, you can't get in a car if you're intoxicated or if you're distracted, which is, so cars now have to have the technology put into them where visually they're watching you. So they're watching you to see, with cameras in your car, to see if you're distracted. Like if you're looking the other way, or if you look distracted, or if you're speeding, then it gives the ability, at some point it'll give the ability for insurance companies or the government to turn your car off. And it started with a very innocent thing, meaning it started with drunk drivers, against drunk drivers. Nobody likes drunk
Mm.
drivers. Okay. So if you're drunk, you can't get in your car and drive.
But how they
Well,
know this?
how does it know that? So it has to use technology. You have to put technology in cars, meaning cameras. Is this person, do they indicate like they're drunk? Do they act like they're drunk? Do they look like they're drunk? Are their eyes bloodshot? Are their eyes distracted? Are they not looking at the road?
Mm.
Are they speeding or going too fast or too slow? Which is very invasive. Okay, none of us want drunk drivers on the road.
Mm.
But none of us really want cameras in our car telling the government everything that you're doing and where you're going and
Mm-hmm.
how fast you're going.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the times, here's some of the problems. When I was on my phone, it said the speed limit was, say, 25 miles an hour. Well, it
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't 25, it was 45. So it was wrong. Like, it got it wrong. And it
Mm.
said I was speeding, and King gave me warnings, warning, you're speeding. Well, if this was implemented technology in a couple of years, I wouldn't be able to drive. It would shut my car off, or it would slow me down to 25 when it's
Mm-hmm.
really not 25. But this is just another step in really technology kind of being invasive and being used for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like companies, government,
Mm-hmm.
people with money and power being able to control you. This is a control issue. And I think technology wise, I'm all for no technology, like none. Let's get rid of it. Let's
Mm-hmm.
dump it, because it's starting to be to the point now that out of balance where it's controlling us versus we control
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
which is terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think it's because they do it all so slowly and
Yes.
progressively do more and allow more and step over the line even more, so you don't even understand it anymore. And I
Yep.
think there's this saying of the frog. Do you know this frog metaphor? To throw a frog, if you throw a frog into hot water, he will jump out immediately. But if you throw in water that's cold and it slowly heat up, he don't jump, because it's like getting used to the temperature. And I think this is exactly what is happening, because slowly, probably technology will, or lines will get crossed. How do you say this like this? Lines
Mm-hmm.
get crossed where rule or personal rights get how do you say this, personal right
Um,
get,
you lose them essentially. You lose your
yeah.
personal rights. They get
And
trampled on. They get you lose your personal rights.
but you don't even, it's not even that big of a shock anymore, because
It's
they
sped up, but that makes sense. And you're right. People, when we do things slowly, it's fine. It's acceptable. If you do things
mm,
immediately, people are resistant to change. But
mhm.
that is very interesting.
It's psychologically makes a lot of sense, because you can tell the big difference if you do something very rapid instead
Mhm.
of slowly. You don't notice it, like psychologically you don't notice as much the difference, and from the beginning start until the end. If
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think it's bad. It's really all just psychology, what they're doing.
And they're using it
Companies,
again.
politics, all that stuff.
They're using it against all of us. Like, it's a
Mhm.
very manipulative tactic, and it's not healthy. We like we hear about a lot of people that suffer from anxiety and depression, and those things didn't exist when I was younger. Like, that
Mhm.
didn't happen. Like, you'd have the one-offs where somebody's just, can't handle things. But
But
nowadays it's
also,
very common.
what I want to say about this, I mean, you lived during that time. I didn't, so I cannot really say it. But also, it is more nowadays more talked about, mental health, than back in the day. And because it's like very taboo topic to talk about, to have mental health problems and have mental disorders. And I think maybe this, what you just described, that back in the day this didn't happen, maybe you were just not so much exposed to that, because also
But it wasn't
nowadays,
okay. That you bring up a good point. Yes, it is
yeah.
more just talked about today, but it's also everybody has it. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
It's also, oh, I
yeah.
have this issue or this sets, whatever it is, whatever the words are
Mm,
they use.
mm-hmm,
For me, that's, yeah, everybody's flawed. We're all flawed. Okay. We all have issues. None of us are perfect. But does that mean I use whatever as an excuse? I can't handle this? No, suck it
mm,
up, figure out how
mm.
to handle it. Like my generation was like, suck it
Yeah.
up. Like, and I tell people, suck it up, walk it off, like figure it out.
Mm,
You got to
yeah.
figure it out because you can't trust technology. You can't trust doctors or those in authority to help you because there's always a financial motive to keep you down and to
Mm-hmm,
keep you suffering. And I think whether it's my generation or just me in general, like figure it out because you can figure it
mm-hmm,
out. We all have flaws. Some of us have more than others. And how do we deal with that? Like the anxiety part, don't watch the news all the time. Like I remember going over to my
mm-hmm.
parents' house recently and my mom was all upset something was happening. I'm like, Mom, turn the damn TV off. Like, turn it off.
Yeah.
She goes,
Mm-hmm,
well, I want to know. No, well, you don't need to know anything. Let's say you know everything. What are you going to do that's going to change the world? Going to change the
mm-hmm,
whole situation? Nothing. You can't
mm-hmm,
do anything. The only thing you can change is how you perceive things and what affects you. It's got a
mm-hmm,
negative effect on you. You have zero effect on that. So turn it
mm-hmm,
off. Deal with things that matter that you can make a difference with. Like if
mm-hmm,
you're going to watch the news because you want to change something, go do it. But to
mm-hmm.
watch the news because it's, first of all, an entertainment hype, it's there to get you excited and riled up so you watch more news. Don't do that. Don't fall into that trap. Like that's an old trap. And then you should really stay off your phone because if you can't handle the news, you'll never be able to handle all the garbage that comes up on your phone. Like
Yeah.
everything. And as we talked about, like just the other day, I was talking about a subject, and I forget what the subject was. It was really a weird off the wall subject. And it started coming up on my phone, on my feed, on
Mm-hmm.
issues and things like that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I've never heard. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I've never heard this before. Maybe this is new. And then I thought to myself, I just talked about this the other day. And
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden it's feeding me this garbage.
It's so scary. Like this happens to me also, not that much often, but I think everyone experienced this before that I use a smartphone and stuff. You talk about something and then this specific niche thing you just talked about just comes up. And then this is the moment where you're like, okay, this is really scary. And I think, okay, how is this in 10 years or 20 years, especially with AI? I cannot even imagine. And
In,
it's,
insane. And
yeah.
I also think your frog thing, like most people don't even realize it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the weird niche,
Mm-hmm.
unusual things that you go, wait a minute. And I think
Mm-hmm.
even as we're talking about this, the phone is figuring out how can I show them things without shocking them? How can I
Mm-hmm.
slowly introduce them to those things without
Mm-hmm.
it being shocking? Because they'll have that figured out and we'll never say, oh gee, it said it gave me things that I talked about. No, it never did that because it
Mm-hmm.
slowly introduced you to those things.
Yeah,
And they're
that's
all harmful. None of them are for our interests. They're for their interests.
the slow thing is the dangerous thing because you cannot trust your perception anymore because you got tricked in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really the dangerous part of this whole thing because
100%.
yeah, if you just, yeah,
Crazy. So we've talked a lot around the subject. Can we talk about art therapy?
yeah.
And even though, and I'll disclose to everybody, I've teased you about art therapy. I've, and I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but I've said that art therapy is just giving people crayons and letting them go crazy, right?
I mean, it's part of it. It's true,
And
If that,
again, that's me
yeah,
dumbing things down to my
yeah,
level of crayons, but share with me on why you got involved in art therapy. Like, what was the, without getting personal, like we don't
yeah.
want to get personal, but share with me what was the thing. This is what I want to do.
Okay, you want me to say this before I explain art therapy, or you want me first explain it? Because I don't know if
Well,
people know what it
explain.
is.
I know now it's beyond the crayons, but explain. Go ahead and explain first what art
Okay.
therapy is.
So, in simple words, art therapy is like a creative therapy approach where you use, instead of in like normal psychotherapy, where you use talk and other methods, mainly through talking to the patient, you use also creative materials for the therapeutic process. So, it's the patient, the therapist, and also the creative art making, and you can use any materials to do that. So this is really very small words to describe. And I got into it because really it was very coincidence, really, because after I finished school, I always was interested in art and drawing and painting. I did this a lot, and I also wanted to do something social afterwards. And then I met someone. I did like a volunteer year in a school, and the person I worked with, he was an art therapist, or he is an art therapist. And then I got through this person, he talked about, hey, this is what it is. And because he knew I like art and want to search, I need something to study for, or like in my path I have to choose. And then he said, hey, why don't you try art therapy as a study? And the good thing is that that university that offers this study was just in the city I lived in and I worked in at that time. So it was really easy for me to apply to this and just stay where I was living. And the crazy thing is that in Germany, there's like 2 schools for art therapy. So it's very coincidence that I just happened to grow up in that city where this is offered. And so it was really easy for me then to apply to this. And then I applied to this. So, and then I got accepted, and then I studied this for 4.5 years. And I finished my degree in 2022 in March. So this is now 2 years, more than 2 years ago. And now, as I said, I work now in a clinic. And if you study art therapy and if you have the degree, you can also work in different fields. We can work mainly in clinical work, but you can also do more social areas like schools or old people home, nursery home, or what is this?
Nursing homes, yes.
Nursing home, and other fields where it's less clinical and less the diagnosis, but more like working with people that are not like diagnosed with mental health disorders. And that's the profession.
Very interesting. So how many art therapy schools are there? Like I've never heard of them, but I'm never around that.
You mean
area.
in the world?
Yeah.
Oh.
Are they all in Germany?
No. You can also do this in the US. I found out
Okay.
last few years, I researched a little bit because I'm also interested in, maybe one day I work maybe somewhere else in the world because I can speak English, and I could imagine also doing in English international art therapeutic work. So I found out that in the US, you can also study this. In New York, I found out you can do this. I don't know, maybe other universities probably too, but it's not the most popular degree because but I have to say, in other countries like Australia, for example, you can also study this. And I've heard from other people that there it's even more popular than in Germany. So it is already a thing in Germany. Like in almost every clinic is already art therapy, but still it's kind of still niche. Some people don't even know what it is.
Right.
Because like everyone knows what is psychotherapy,
right,
or kind of have an idea about it. But not everyone knows what is art therapy. It's still a little bit on the niche, but it's coming.
I thought you were lying to me when you said art therapy. Like,
Maybe I did. Maybe it doesn't exist, and I actually
I never heard of it before.
Yeah.
Like I had never heard of art therapy before until I met you, and that's very very interesting. Because there are often people just don't like to talk. Like they don't want to talk through things. But it's interesting how you can pick up different things through art. And I know you don't want to give a lot of secrets away, and I don't even know if there are secrets in art therapy, but I'm making this up. But if you were to meet a patient, how would you approach art therapy with them?
I mean, there's different ways on how to start like a therapeutic relationship, or yeah, but I would probably, it always consists of like a main structure, like a therapy session, a group session, or a single session with one person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like where you meet, and then if this is first initial contact, you maybe talk a little bit. Okay, why is this person here? What's going on? And if this person does not have many words to say, you can also start with a creative, what is this, input? Like start already creating, and then the creative part is always part of the art therapeutic practice. And then afterwards, it's also the reflection part where the therapist also comes in more, where, for example, I have someone in front of me, and then this person starts drawing something or painting or whatever. And then when this is finished, I and this person look at this piece, and I try to find out, or we try to find out, okay, what is going on, what appeared, what is the picture showing, and things like that. And through that, you can get access to things if you have a trained art therapist that is trained into looking at pictures or looking at symbols or colors, and also interactive with how the person is in front of you, how is the person feeling, what are they saying, and connecting all of that into a conversation, so I can ask the questions then, and that way you can find a communication path to go forward. And the good thing about art therapy compared to classical psychotherapy that you talk is art, if you do intuitive, you don't have to be good at art. This is what many people think it is. Like, I have to make a nice picture. No, it's not. You can, as long as you can take a pencil and do something, that is already enough. And the thing is, oftentimes when it's about emotions and difficult topics, it's hard, as you said, it's hard to talk about. It's hard to speak about. Also because we don't grow up in a society where, as I said before, where mental health or hard topics or even negative emotions people talk about. They don't. We're not taught to talk about, I'm angry or I'm sad. It's like more suck it up, like that's more the approach,
More my therapy is
and
just suck it up.
yeah. And for some people this works, but some people it doesn't. Or
Right.
I would say most of the people, like if you're angry or sad, you should rather feel it instead of, or maybe it depends on the situation, but yeah, you should not all the time swallow things and stuff like that. And if
Well,
you,
but so without having zero therapy background, okay, I have a no nonsense kind of background, and that's where I think from a different standpoint, we don't talk about it. We just kind of deal with it from my generation. And I also think that therapists sometimes never want to fix things. Not that you can really necessarily fix things, but they just want to talk people through it. And then when I was growing up, the therapy, at least that I was aware of, was people talking through things, and then they give you medication to sedate you, to keep you calm. I didn't think that was right. And then they got rid of all that, and now there was nothing. So that's why we have homelessness and craziness going on, because nobody's dealing with this. But now we have a new generation that just wants to share everything and complain about them having issues with things instead of just dealing with it. I think we're all built differently, and maybe we need to talk to people and realize what our issues are, bring awareness to that, whatever way, but then just deal with it. Like, okay, we're all different. They're going to be more popular. They're going to be stronger. They're going to be taller. They're going to be this. And okay, this is what I believe God made you. Now deal with it. Now, what are you going to do with that? Instead of complaining about it. I think we have a lot of complaining going on. If they were Google reviewing themselves, they'd have a lot of complaints and nobody would have any positive.
Yeah.
So I think I think art therapy is a very unusual way to get them, being from the recruiting side of the world. My object is to get people to talk, because if you talk, you
Mm,
find out what's inside. But there are a lot of people that don't want to talk or don't like talking. And I think the
mm-hmm,
art therapy portion of it, from what I can see, potentially could open that door. They could have
mm-hmm,
more comfortable sharing, and it'll move or evolve the conversation.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that one of the key things why art therapy is so valuable is because it's not focused so much on that talking, cognitive thinking, and like, because you also have to be aware to talk about things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to be conscious about things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And art therapy also works a lot with the unconscious and with drawing and art, intuitive art making. Things can appear that you were not even aware of, and that intuitively gets visible, and that can be parts of your unconscious. I think this is a little bit maybe like complex or not so easy to maybe so understand, but it shows up then on the paper, for example, as like symbols or like connections on how you maybe draw this or that. And if you have a therapist that is aware of, oh, maybe this could lead to this, or this tree, blah blah blah, whatever, like kind of like not interpretate, what is his name,
Interpret it. Interpret.
not
Interpret. Yep.
interpreted the picture as like, oh, you draw a tree on fire, this means you have depression, or I don't know, like no
Mm-hmm.
general explanations, but you kind of use the picture and the person doing it as a lead to, oh, what could this and that mean for that person. But important part is also that the person who draws or do the creative part has their own explanation and their own reality. For example, someone who paints the whole picture in black, maybe if you look at it you think, oh, this looks very dark and maybe this person's depressed. Maybe this person feels black as a very calm space, and this person says black was my grandma's favorite color, and
Mm-hmm.
it reminds me of my grandma, and I'm happy about my grandma, or whatever, and this is very subjective on what things can mean to people. So if you would show me a picture and tell me how is this person doing, I could not really do it, because I can have assumptions, but I will never know.
You have
And this
to
is,
talk them through those things, and
yeah,
you have to interview them.
yeah,
Essentially, you have to
yeah,
interview.
yeah, kind of,
Well, in my words, you have to interview them
yeah,
to understand
mm,
that, instead of saying the circle stands for this, or the black stands for depression.
yeah.
It's
And
not
what I want,
different colors don't stand for different things. If they use yellow, they're happy. If they
mhm.
use orange, they're going to get mad. If they use red, oh my goodness, they're way beyond help.
And there is a collective knowledge about these things. Like, at one point, things are subjective to every person, but at the other point, I don't know if you know Carl Jung. He's like a very famous psychiatrist, and he was one of the founders of the modern
Mm.
psychoanalytic theories and stuff. And he described the collective unconscious, which is like a kind of knowledge everyone has, because we as humanity evolved and have like kind of symbols or archetypes that stand for specific things everyone understands. For
Mm.
example, a mother symbol, because everyone has a mother, or like, for example, what you said, happy yellow, because we do have sensations inside of us that react to kind of similar often.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we look at yellow, people rather maybe feel expansion or feel more happy than if they look at black. There is collective agreement on things like this as well, that play into looking at pictures, and but also coming back also to the part everyone is individual, and you have to kind of balance both things as someone, as art therapist, for example.
That's
But I
very
also,
interesting.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
very interesting.
yeah, this whole like history of how psychotherapy developed is very interesting to look at. There's many different approaches and like theories and methods and stuff. And yeah, and what I also wanted to say, what you said before about the suck it up and find solution part, is that a main key of therapy is to find goals. And you also do this kind of in the beginning, where you find a goal. What is the goals in for? What is this therapy for? What do you want to reach? What do you want to change? Because you go to therapies to change something. And maybe listening or talking and the person listening helps already, so you can make changes in your life, or you come together to find out, okay, what can you do? So that is, therapy is not just listening and then person complain only. And if you can recognize, if for example, if I have a patient and I have this patient since 3 years and all the time complaining, all the time the same things, I will talk and I will say that, hey, you since 3 years, it seems to me you repeating the same things and nothing's changing. What do you think about this? And then you can jump on this, and then you can find, okay, why is this person not developing from outside view? And this is also a way to find back, okay, where are we developing? Where do we find solutions like this? So even if something like that comes up in therapy, someone's not developing or cannot fulfill their goals, you can talk about this, and this way you can find back to the goal, for example.
I think that's interesting. But you ready for a disagreement?
Yeah.
My perspective, and this may be a negative perspective, it's certainly a limited perspective, but I think most people don't want to change. I think you'll hear a lot of people that complain.
Yeah.
And remember, I see this from the career standpoint. People complain about their job, but they don't make the effort to change.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know everyone in the world, but I can also see that being realistic, that many people don't want to change because change always mean unknown. And
correct. They're
if you
comfortable in their space.
Yeah. And
even if it's space that they complain about, they're comfortable in their space.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, I read something the other day that most people want adventure.
Mm-hmm.
That if you ask, do you want adventure? Yes. But the majority of people just don't go through the action to make adventure happen. Like they just don't, they want something, but they just don't take action on it. It's really from a behavior standpoint or a career standpoint. You know, I just say people just don't change. Like they'll be the same. And there may be different decorations. There may be few people that do change. I mean, few people do change. That does happen. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying overall, people just don't change. So,
I mean, yeah, you can have this opinion. I don't know if I would disagree or agree, because I just don't know, to be honest.
And I think it's noble, 100% noble. Like you've got the patience to spend time with them to help them through these issues. I don't have the patience for that. Like I would tell them to suck it up. Okay. This is the issue. Here's the action. Yeah. What do you think? Like where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? Here's a strategy or a plan. Let's try this. And it's never like, it's kind of like when I built the cabin. How did you build the cabin? One nail at a time. Like it's one screw at a time. Like the end goal seems so insurmountable, so big, seems impossible. But what isn't impossible is, can you do this in a day or a week or this? Yeah, I can do that. Let's help you get to that goal, the one nail at a time, one step at a time. And most people see their goals as insurmountable, and they don't even take that first step, because I think part of it, like you said, is they're comfortable. I think they're afraid, but I also think that they complain about where they are, but they don't want to make that change. And it's sad because we're all so capable of so much, but we just don't do it.
But you also have to believe that you're capable. Many people don't believe that.
Yeah.
Many people don't think that they are capable or that they can change something. And then you end up in a bad place and you just get more depressed. And yeah, you could. And if someone tells you, oh, get it done, just do it, but you don't like you don't think anything can change and you're hopeless and you end up in depression, you will not make anything because you don't believe that anything else is possible if you're all your life only lived in bad places, mentally or physically, or it doesn't matter. So
I
yeah.
mean, that 100% true. Like I always
Mhm.
try to see the positive side of things. Like, but there are people that just, they don't, they've heard they can't do it. They can't do it. But I live in the US where I just think anything is possible. You can do
Mm,
anything and be anything you want to be. In that, what holds us back is ourselves often. That's the
mm,
holdback. And sometimes we get cocky in that you can be anything
mm,
and look at other people. We all have limitations. Like I'll never be a basketball player. Like that's not going to happen. But should that stop me from playing basketball? No,
mm.
that's just an excuse to not be competitive
Yeah.
in.
But also at the same time, like you also have to be aware of what your capacities are. And
Know
some
your
people,
limitations.
yeah. And also some people, they, because they are born in a specific class or in an economic different environment, like if you have not so much money and not so much education, you still, people make it. I'm not saying this is not happening, but like the chances of someone making it, doing hard, working hard, and being successful with specific factors like money, education, household, parents, whatever, is higher than someone that maybe is also from someone that faced racism and classism and all of these things. And I think this is a very social conversation also, because not everyone basically has the same chance, because the world is built on specific rules and social rules also, and chances are not all the same, even if it seems like, at least I think this. And
Well, I get that. Like I understand that. And I came from a middle class family. So yes, I had more perks than other people, but there are other people that had a lot more perks than I did, a lot more options. And I but I also think that that's also a factor that limits people. Like
mhm,
from any yes, there are certain advantages that I had that other people didn't have. They grew up in more crime ridden areas. They had to deal with that situation.
mhm,
But I think, at least in the United States, that there's nothing that should hold you back. Like there's opportunity out there. There's with um, hard work, determination, grit. Um, you can kind of do anything. You can accomplish anything. Yes, we start at different places in the race, but we all have the
mhm,
opportunity to win that race. Like most of the companies in the US started in people's garages or in their
mhm,
basements, and they grew them into huge,
mhm.
billion-dollar global companies. I just think using certain things as an excuse,
Yeah.
we're not in the age of racism. Like we're not in the, yeah, it happens. I get it. We all prefer people that look like us and act like us and talk like us. Okay. But we're in this day and age where, it's illegal to discriminate against people, and certain people
Mhm,
have different advantages that I didn't have. So I
mhm,
think that also, though, can be an excuse, but I get it. I'm realistic. I understand that you have more financial resources. You can do more things.
mhm.
Um, money covers all evil. Like, but we're fairly level on a playing field, more level than we have been. There's certainly a separation of the classes and all of that stuff, but I think if you let those things be an issue, they become an issue. You shouldn't
Yeah.
you shouldn't let them become an issue. What can you do? What can you control? That's what I ask
Mhm,
people.
mhm,
What can you control? What I always say, worry about the thing you can change, and that's yourself. Control yourself, figure out how to make that a positive change. But I think the whole thing about art therapy is it's so interesting. It gets people to open up in a different way. And I know, Sala, we've talked over an hour here and we haven't even covered all the topics we have listed, which
Yeah.
so I don't want to keep going on, but there are a lot of things that I think we could talk about moving forward with future discussions.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this art therapy part is cool. It's interesting. Like,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't want you to diagnose me start an art therapy lesson with you, because
I
I don't
already
want
have your diagnosis.
to. Yeah, and I'm off the charts. I
Yeah.
worked years ago. I worked with somebody that worked for an attorney. Okay, a very
Okay.
very popular attorney in the United States. Somebody that was in the news all the time. And
Okay.
this woman was an administrator, did some work for us, and she analyzed handwriting. She was a
Oh,
handwriting
okay.
expert. She was an expert. Like, she did trials all over the world, but she was in a couple
Interesting.
trials that were really popular back in the day. And she did some work for us. And I remember her saying something about handwriting. And that was back in the day when we wrote things. And I said, "Oh, what would you say about my handwriting?" She goes, "You don't want to know."
So you never knew that?
I
You never
never
found out?
knew.
Oh, wow.
I said, "What would you say about my handwriting?" Because she'd analyze handwriting. She goes, "You don't want to know." Like, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. And I didn't push it any further. Like, okay,
Yeah.
you're some psychopath, crazy lunatic, and you don't want to know that. And
That's funny.
I think sometimes you already think that of me with my art therapy lesson. And I'm okay with that. That's fine.
Yeah,
We're
so
all
yeah.
different.
Sometimes it's better to know less, you know.
The less you know, the better. And
Yeah.
and
In some cases, you
it's
know.
true that, and this is going totally against probably what you think in art therapy, but I always think the more you know about somebody, the less you like them.
The more you know about somebody, the
The
less you
less you
like them.
like them.
Interesting statement. I
It
mean, I can understand. Yeah.
it you like people. Okay,
Yeah.
imagine popular people that you know, or people that are real popular in whatever movies or whatever you
Yeah.
like. Okay, and you get to meet those people and get to know them.
Hmm.
The odds are you won't like them. They always say, the statement is that I've always
Yeah.
heard is, never meet your heroes.
Yeah. Especially when you have expectations, I guess.
Well, you
Then,
expect them to be heroes or great
mhm.
people, and you find out they're flawed people, and the more you dig in, you go, oh my goodness, these people are just crazy.
but
Um,
but but it also goes the other way. Like, I think
oh
sometimes you
yeah, the
meet
more you get
people
to know
first.
me, the crazier I am. Yes.
You can also like people. This happens so much. This is why you get into relationships with people, because you get to know them and you get know better and stuff, and
Yes,
you like them,
but
and I think,
you always uncover a landmine, and you go, "Oh my
yeah,
goodness."
of course, but also no one's perfect. Like,
No,
everyone
no,
has things.
nobody's
So
perfect. And here's how I cope. And this is again an anti-therapy discussion at this point. But
yeah.
one thing I always say is, especially driving. So I used to do a commute, an hour and a half, hour and a half each way to work. Okay. And in the wintertime, sometimes that was 2 hours or 2.5 hours each way. So my commute was
Oh,
long. I
yeah.
dealt with a lot of people along the way. And I used to get upset about how people drove, and you take it personal. And then it just hit me one day. And then after that, I just never really took it personal. But it hit me one day, and I came up with this, and this is another one that you're going to cringe over. Is I always said they're all idiots. And
Nice.
if you just take the philosophy that they're all
Yeah.
idiots, for me, I didn't take it personal anymore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I
No,
had
it's just actually
sympathy with them.
not bad advice. In some cases, I think this could help. Like, this statement, it
Yeah,
helps
well,
you.
it's kind of a mean statement, but if you take it in, they're all idiots. It doesn't make me better than them, but it makes me realize we're all flawed, and they're all going through different issues, and who knows what they're going through that day. Um,
And also, you don't let them know.
oh no,
That's
I'm not
good.
telling them. giving them a hand gesture or yelling at them. It helps me relax and go, okay, well, they're all idiots. Like,
I heard a similar statement before, not like phrase like yours, but it is let them. And I think that's also an interesting statement. If you get very upset about things and complain a lot and stuff, and then just remember, let them. Means you make boundary and you don't let this affect you. And I think that's what you're doing with saying that, or
yeah, I take that statement and say, let them be an asshole. Like,
yeah,
that makes me feel better. Like, let them be a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah,
but,
and that's
good. Yeah. This has been very interesting, and I think we need to continue the discussion in more depth. And I'd love to hear more about like art therapy and different things, and also your journey in culturally in Germany and US and different perspectives. We could talk about that at another time, and culturally and family. That would be very interesting.
I think so.
Well, Salo, thank you very much for the time. We need to continue this discussion. We haven't covered the topics I'd love to cover. There are a lot more things to discuss, but your insight, even though we have big discrepancies in age and geography and all those things that everybody could have an excuse for, I think we have a lot more in common, and I think I could learn a lot more from you. This has been a great discussion, and I'd love to have further discussions about whether it be serious topics like some of the ones we've discussed, or more casual topics, or goofy whatever it is. I think you can bring value to this.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and I had fun. And
Good.
We make another episode.
Absolutely.
So,
well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate everybody's time, and just join us next time when we dig into crazier things.
Bye.